Gavi Loreno shines in an immaculate lace death gown. She struggles for breath, light glittering over her abdomen with each difficult quiver. The film crew works quietly. A grip dials down a lilac LED. The cinematographer dollies in slowly. The makeup person stands with the caterer, heads bowed. Angela Newberry watches the monitor behind a discretionary curtain. She wears funeral black, but her hair is messy, eyes smeared with yesterday's makeup. The death was scheduled for last night, but Loreno's body deemed otherwise. The extra hours with the dying are not appreciated. Newberry checks the views on her phone, and her shoulders slump. We already peaked. In every wide shot, crane shot, and close-up, Loreno, 86-year-old social media lifer, seems alone. On her elaborate bed, with her failing vision, she herself may mistake the bright glare for isolation. But sitting beside her, crowding the satin sheets, watching every drip of the IV, and counting every heart rate blip, there are millions. Miss you already, Gav Gav. The Lauren Nation will love you forever. Boring. Some fans from her time on Vista, Flounder, or the short-lived AR Experience dinner. Others are detractors, death pool gamblers, or freelancers covering the death for a paycheck. I'm one of them. However, my view is unique. I'm in the room, behind the curtain. Newberry bites the chain of her necklace while the camera zooms to Loreno's flickering eyes. Approaching the drop in 3, 2... I peek out as the monitor flatlines. When Gavi Loreno dies, there are no freeze-frame death masks, no soul-passing AR filters, no infinite scroll of mourners. Besides the hours of viral content, Loreno dies the way her parents and her grandparents did. Her chest stops moving. Her muscles go stiff. Her eyes close. The audio engineer mutes the heart monitor for a moment of silence. I realize I've stopped breathing. My arms are shaking. Loreno is the first person I've seen die. No one else here can say the same. As I reflect, the crew is already breaking down C-stands. The makeup artist washes their brushes in the unisex bathroom. Loreno lies in her deathbed, while Newberry, executive funeral coordinator for Grovesmark Conceptual, takes the last photos anyone will ever take of Gavi Loreno. In seconds, she's uploading them to the meme web. I ask her what the hardest part of the job is. Saying no. Loreno's death was organized for an entire year and cost as much as both her houses. There were designer IV bags, sponsors in the dozens, exclusive meme formats from celebrated artists, and an advertising campaign orchestrated by the team behind the Toledo Olympics. 18 million people watched her die, topping the grief app Obit for 24 hours. She earned a record number of first-day eulogies. And yet, this is likely the first time you've heard of her passing. Though technically a success, Loreno's death was standard. A 6-month tease, a living wake, final wishes for VIP fans, funereal donor tears, time lapses of her decline from health. Popular as it was for fans, it was panned by critics as safe. For Newberry, it's a small consolation Gavi isn't alive to complain. One of the few benefits when your clientele is the pre-dead. Views are supposed to max out at the drop, she says. Her dying was so tepid, no one stayed for the death. Newberry's cheeks are flushed. Her head shakes. She shows more emotion than when Loreno breathed her last. An absolute failure, Newberry moans into her palms. For lives spent in the harsh glare of second-gen social media, there is newfound pressure to die right. As the capstone of a life of relevance, death too must be relevant, shocking, important. Loreno at least doesn't have to weather the poor reviews. Newberry wipes her eyes, red-rimmed and shining. The pressure to die right is hardest on the living. By the time you read this, Newton Starlight will be dead. If everything goes right, you'll already know. But as I write, Starlight is alive and up to their breathing tubes in stress. It used to be you could relax on your deathbed, the social media savant and former YouTube monarch tells me. Newton is 38, a shaved square shock of orange ombre hair towering on their head in a gelled curlicue, designer clothing baggy on their emaciated form. Starlight is dying of a long-dormant genetic defect. In 2 months, their lungs and heart will become paralyzed. They only learned about this condition this year, a big win for the grief market. When you're given an opportunity like this, you owe it to yourself, to your team, to your followers, to use it right. Starlight squirms their body and scrunches their face in pain. At this time, the disease is still a secret. Starlight smiles like a little kid with a crush. Everyone's in for a big surprise. Starlight is Angela Newberry's newest client. She's down the hall in the social media icon's palatial estate, barking orders into her phone, pacing staccato across a marble floor. She has more than recovered since I last saw her. Her eyes have less the look of a director and more the steely glint of a dictator. "This can be the death of the year," she says unprompted. "Could be?" "Better than Loreno's, at least." I learned my lesson. Newberry reveals that she had not intended to take on more clients after the poor showing of Loreno's tepid passing. "I was talking retirement. Can you imagine that?" Starlight changed her mind. Even then, she would not agree until they signed what, in the grief market, is a landmark deal. Starlight has signed over full rights to the time of death. With this kind of drop, so sudden, so tragic, you can really get deep saturation, Newberry says. If you do it right. That's why I had to have rights to the timing. I ask Starlight how it feels to sign away something most people will never be asked to sacrifice. Death is the most personal, lonely experience of a life, and for most of us, ceding that moment to another is unthinkable. What if it's before you're ready? What about last-minute revivals? Starlight helps me see the dilemma in another light. Make no mistakes. I'm a product. They let this sink in. There are over 100 people who depend on me for their entire income, and I earn it for them every year. My life already belongs to so many people. Why should death change anything? Besides, they explain, they aren't too concerned with the timing or the new ownership of their death. I trust Newberry. We see the same vision. I ask them what the biggest challenge will be. They begin to laugh when a fit takes over. Their back arches. Their head bobs violently as coughs escape, each rattling and wet. Finally, they catch their breath enough to rasp an answer, keeping it a secret. Before I can begin my coverage, I spend 2 hours with lawyers for Starlight and Grovesmark Conceptual, filling out extensive non-disclosure agreements and likeness rights, including the use of my voice and physical dimensions. But it's more than keeping secrets. It's about active disinformation. This is a great example, Newberry tells me as she pulls up the VR feed for a promotional interview set for release next week. Compared to the Starlight I now know, this version glows. The wrinkles pain brought to their face completely gone. We digitally constructed the entire interview. Newberry grins. With so much old footage, it's no problem. When we reveal what Starlight actually looks like, you'll hear about it. Believe me. Starlight began their viral career when they were 10 years old. Some fans have known them for their entire lives. Their death cannot just happen. It has to pop and sizzle. It's just as much about the dying as the death, Starlight tells me. In fact, it might be more about the dying. In the week before their death, they will release a book, a playlist of spoken word performances, a new makeup tutorial series, and a new fashion line ominously named Parting Gift. Each launch contains a clue to the death that will follow. No one used to think about dying properly. Bowie changed that. After him, there was the right way to die and the boring way. In many ways, we're hoping to pull a Bowie. I ask Starlight what their favorite Bowie song is, and they say, Ground Control to Major Tom. I must do a poor job concealing my horror, because Starlight begins to laugh. For Christ's sake, I'm kidding. Sound and vision. Though I've only spent a few hours with Starlight, it dawns on me how soon they will be gone forever. I find myself missing someone who is still here. Over the next week, I pick up grief market lingo. Drop is the moment of death. Tease is the reveal that the pre-dead is dying. Showing is the living wake, or more aptly, the public countdown to death. I'd cry is the equivalent of praise. But one phrase requires some explaining. What does it mean? I ask Newberry over a bagel and coffee breakfast shoot. To pull a squirty. She stops spreading cream cheese. Caught in a memory. There was a rapper who passed 2 years ago. Lil Squirty Clump. Only 22. An untreatable liver disease. Her voice wavers. Lil Squirty had a lot of potential. I ask what went wrong. He didn't die! She laughs. Despite a dire diagnosis, Lil Squirty lived a whole extra year. Moreover, she says, he didn't look sick enough. It really sapped the story. Here you have a big celebrity with a beloved catalog of songs, millions of young fans, and a tragic disease. If he had died when he was supposed to, it could still be in the top 10 on Obit. But he took his time. When he did croak, it was a blip. That's why they call a failed death a squirty. Was he one of your clients? Newberry does not answer me. Starlight's death is set for the 10th of October, 2 weeks away. Newberry's team, and even Starlight, are working themselves ragged. The premiere content, the final words t-shirts, and the final AR faux touch cuddles Starlight will ever release are being crafted, refined, and refined again. Starlight is not easy to please. I love my team, I can't stress this enough. Starlight begins, but they still don't get Starlight. They push the sex symbol angle, and yes, that's part of it. But they miss the inner turmoil. I'm a fantasy novel. Sometimes I'm sexy. Sometimes I'm like super complicated. You have to be both definable and undefinable. That's what drives the fandom after you're gone. Though Starlight will not cancel any plans, slow down the pace for any reason, their condition requires a pause. Midway through a strategy meeting, they pass out. The on-site medical team rushes into a boardroom to find Starlight on the floor, their bruised head in Newberry's lap. They had fallen out of their chair. "They're not breathing!" I hear a woman shout, and assistants run down the hall with duffel bags. Voices shout, but Newberry stays calm. By Starlight's side, her mouth to their ear. I'm forced out of the room, but I watch. She's tender. In less than a minute, the episode subsides, and Starlight is conscious and breathing, albeit with difficulty. I ask Newberry what she was telling Starlight. She smiles.
You can't leave.
You don't have the right. We think the ordeal is over, until later Newberry receives an anonymous message containing a video file and 4 words: pay or I'll tell. The video is the scene from earlier. Starlight collapsed on the ground, skin pale and spotted, hair a mess, an emaciated husk of the social media icon attended by a desperate team of physicians. When I see Newberry next, she's missed another night of sleep.
We have no idea who it was. Maybe a caterer? We couldn't take the risk.
Though Starlight won't die for another week, their likeness has already earned one fan $50,000. The next few days pass with bated breath. Though Starlight has been planning their death for months, only now do they look the part. I can't wait to die, they tell me in our next interview. I'm looking forward to a nice long rest. They smile. The video never surfaces. A week before the death, Newberry and her team release Starlight's book as planned. YouTube Monarch is released to a few small reviews and a respectable showing on the bestseller list. A modest start that does not bother Newberry in the least.
It doesn't have to do amazing,
she tells me.
It just has to be there, waiting. In a week, it will be at the top of every list.
2 days later, the spoken word playlist, featuring scores of celebrity cameos, is released across all the major music services. A live version streams concurrently on 2 platforms. Again, it makes ripples, with waves expected soon enough. Starlight is spared the media cycle. The team prepared for this. Interviews taped before the book was even written now air. Starlight, for the first time in their career, relaxes while their digital self covers the media circus. As far as Starlight and the team can tell, all that's left is the death. It's the day of Starlight's funeral when I wake up to an alert on my phone. The same alert that woke most of us in the Western Hemisphere. Breaking. Matt Joey LeBlanc dead at 92. Home invasion ends in homicide. Like the rest of the world, time seems to stand still. I had grown up on Friends reruns and had loved the Oscar-winning performances in LeBlanc's late life resurgence. My phone floods with texts, and every headline I read begins with LeBlanc and ends with homicide. He was, after David Schwimmer's tragic motorcycle accident, the last remaining friend. For Angela Newberry and Newton Starlight, the news is worse than it is for most of us.
Of course this happens to me,
Newberry says into her phone. She's on a call with Grovesmark. The simultaneous tease and showing is supposed to start in 2 hours. Starlight is conflicted. I'm completely overshadowed, they seethe one moment. Then later, if I was dead, I wouldn't have to know a world without Joey. The film crew has been on set since 7 a.m. They're eating donut holes and drinking coffee in the white cyclorama. The lights are lit. The custom death filters have been uploaded to the obit. The press packets approved for release. Newberry gets off her phone. When she walks to the platform the deathbed is set on, she looks more tired than I have ever seen her.
The drop is canceled,
she shouts. The crew is sent home for the day. The sheets are taken off the bed. Starlight is still alive. While the media feeds mourn the beginning of a post-Friends world, Newberry scrambles to set a new drop 3 weeks from now. The medical team is alerted, and blood transfusions and selective freezing are coordinated in a mad dash.
If we do it 2 weeks later, the death will be fresh, but it'll get paired with Joey. People have grief refresh rates. 3 weeks is just enough time. Grief is precious. You can't let it get diluted.
Starlight is in shock. This is bullshit, they mutter. Their anguish is potent, but quiet. Their lungs are already beginning to paralyze. The media cycle over LeBlanc's death doesn't end with his death. As the day progresses, it's revealed the home invasion and homicide was all a clever ruse by the marketing company. A planned homicide. It's simultaneously scandalous, impressive, and devastating. Though bizarrely legal under new assisted suicide legislator, crew members are indicted. Newberry looks defeated. The media attention for such a spectacle will last longer than she can imagine. She reschedules Starlight's drop again, this time a month later. Starlight does not take the new date well. I can't wait that long. Something in their eyes makes it sound prophetic. Preparations are set in motion for the new drop date. I join the film crew the next day for a morning shoot. They want to cover the LeBlanc death with Starlight, get their perspective, fold the biggest death of the year into their own passing. Newberry wears the same clothes she wore yesterday. She checks the time and bites the chain of her necklace.
Where is Starlight?
The client is 2 hours late to the shoot. Brian, a PA, calls Starlight's phone, leaves a message. He sends an email. He calls again. Finally, someone drives to Starlight's estate and calls back with the foreseen, yet somehow unexpected news. Without a single camera on them, Newt and Starlight passed in their sleep. This is the worst twist Newberry has yet endured, and it shows on her face. Her posture. She sways. The crew is once again gathered for a canceled shoot. People mutter back and forth, and the caterer begins to break down her table when Newberry makes the hardest choice of her career.
We're keeping the new date.
There is resolve in her voice. The crew stands taller as she calls out team members by name, every word a command.
Go to the estate, now, and get ice.
2 co-producers pace the corners of the set, arranging immediate deliveries, booking new spaces, voices rising high with the pressure. In 20 minutes flat, Starlight's body arrives in a body bag loaded with ice. They are the second dead body I've ever seen, but without the reverence of before. The body slumps in a bag on the ground, a puddle growing around its base. My stomach twists into a knot. What are you going to do? I ask Newberry. A contingency plan, she says, typing on her phone. You always have to have a backup. Laborers in jumpsuits prop open the double doors and dolly in sloshing barrels, each labeled with chemical warnings. I ask her what the contingency plan is. We fake it. Technicians pump Starlight with preservatives. Their lungs are artificially ventilated, and their heart is zapped into beating again. Still dead, but at least the juices are flowing. In the next hour, before any further decay or muscular freezing occurs, Newberry's team will film Starlight's new dying and death. I watch the stiff body loosen, turn flush. What defined Starlight is gone, however alive the body looks. Again, I do a poor job concealing my horror. What if the fans can tell? I ask Newberry. So what? There's an edge I haven't heard in her voice before. Look at LeBlanc. It has to work in the moment, that's it. This isn't a documentary. It's theater. Technically, it's rather feasible. All this time, while Starlight's accounts have been regularly updated with falsified healthy posts, pre-recorded healthy videos, simulated audio replacement, Starlight has been building an alternate sick timeline of posts, secret videos, and selfies to be released after death. Their life has already been a lie for months. The work put into this misdirection makes fabricating a death surprisingly straightforward. In an hour, Starlight's falsely breathing, pumping body is set up on the deathbed. Right on schedule. The lights glow, the camera dollies in, and without the need for a discretionary curtain, Newberry commands the set. She shouts from her chair, "Put 3 hours on the clock!" The countdown begins. At Newberry's command, the cinematographer cycles around the body. The team tries different light combos before settling on an ethereal green-blue that fits the Starlight brand well. The clock ticks down. Shots are taken and retaken for safety. Newberry, despite the calamity of the morning, is composed. Happy almost. With the body already dead, nothing can impede her vision. "Approaching the drop!" she shouts with hands cupped over her mouth. 5, 4, 3. Watching Loreno die had been surreal, but seeing Starlight die bests it. I know the whole scene is fiction. Part of me, I cannot deny, is disgusted. Yet, as aware as I am of the lie, it works. My heart breaks as I watch Starlight struggle for air, though they really don't. Perhaps it's the combined effect of the surreal chaos and the sorrow, but when Starlight's monitor goes flat, I cry. A silence takes the room. Somehow, Starlight appears more dead now than before. "We got it," Newberry says. The crew begins breaking down at once. I'm stunned. Can it really be that simple? What about the fan interaction? I ask. The VIP funeral passes. Aren't they expecting responses from Starlight?
"We have an audio library,"
she says, waving the question away.
"We can make Starlight say anything."
4 weeks pass, and the death cycle has been clear for days. The pain of Matt Joey LeBlanc's demise has faded, the evidence from his case already auctioned off to true crime collectors. The world is ready to grieve again. When Newberry releases the video of Starlight, sickly, pale, thin, explaining that they will be dead in the next 3 hours, I hear about it. My phone buzzes. A friend sends me a text, then another. I was working on an article about them, wasn't I? For the first time, I feel disconnected from a death, like it's an adaptation of a book I've already read. Though the initial tease picks up slowly, by the time of the drop, Starlight has a record-breaking number of views. The meme web is all Starlight for 3 whole days. Fans quote Starlight's newest book, the albums, finding each, by now, obvious clue. Comments range from, "They seemed so healthy," to, "It can't be true." Conspiracies begin, and only double when the next day, Newberry releases weeks of footage from the secret, sick timeline. Video tributes flood social media. Sculptors construct VR love statues. Artists print novelty t-shirts. For a few days, I forget about Matt LeBlanc. When I next meet with Angela Newberry in her office, she isn't as pleased as I expected. I had pictured her with feet up on her desk, hands behind her head. Instead, she's working. "Hold!" she says, then abruptly shouts, "Well, if you really want to work, then yes, you will hold." She presses a button, sets down the device, and mimes an explosion bursting from her skull.
"So that's how I've been. How about you?"
She laughs.
"What was the question?"
I repeat my first, and what turns out to be my final question. Are you ever satisfied with your work?
"It doesn't matter," she says. "Whether I'm satisfied or not, they need me. Starlight was a month ago, and I can't even tell you their first name. We're on to the next.
bigger and better.
She tells a joke I've heard variations of for the past month. That's the thing about the grief market. Everybody dies.
The